In a world where Reggie Fils-Aimé shocks the world with his sudden departure, and E3 is becoming more and more interesting by the day, this is Sick and Wired. Welcome everybody back to the Sick Critic podcast, Sick and Wired. It's been a hot minute since we've been here, so there's plenty to cover. But real quick, just an overview. We're going to be talking about some of the news, like Reggie Fils-Aimé leaving Nintendo, some confirmations coming up for E3, and then we're going to get into the big thing we want to talk about, which is kind of what exactly is the most important aspect for a video game. Like, if all else fails, this thing can kind of save a video game, or that having good blank can define a video game, however you want to put it. But so that's kind of what we're in store for today. But we're gonna get into first with what we've been playing recently. So David, take it away. You are my co-host today. Welcome.
Hi. I have actually been playing a lot of Anthem lately. I am actually the one doing the review for Sick Critics, so I've been trying to sink as much time into it as I can muster. There's definitely some very positive things that I really like about it that Anthem does right, and then there's some other ones that I'm just like kind of cringeworthy and stuff that, you know, I wish would quit happening, like the disconnects that I keep having. It seems like anytime I'm trying to join a buddy of mine to play it, like the application kind of fails. It says like lost connection to server, and it sends me back to the main screen. Then when I finally, after like 3 or 4 attempts of that, you know, I join up with him, and like probably a half hour into playing, and it actually happened just a couple nights ago, I was like flying the javelin under the water, and I went to go like burst up out of the water and fly towards this titan that we were going to go fight, and just as like the helmet of my javelin broke the surface, my entire screen just froze. And I was like, okay. And I was like kind of bummed out about it, and I closed down the app, you know, and reopened it, and it still said that I had a session up and running, so I jumped in and joined him. But it's just like little things like that just kind of keep pulling me out of the game. And so I just, like I said, I've been trying to put in as much time as possible, but a lot of it's just been playing solo. Like, I haven't really been able to play with any of my friends because nobody else wants to buy this game. And it really sucks because it is actually a very good title. Coming from, and this is coming from somebody that has never played a BioWare game. I'm talking no Dragon Age, no Mass Effect, nothing. This is my very first BioWare game. So,
well, don't let this define BioWare, because they've definitely had better stuff. I mean, I haven't gotten super far into playing Anthem. I've played my fair share. I played the VIP demo. I even played the closed alpha.
Oh yeah, so
back in December or something like that. So I've had a fair amount of experience, and I'll already tell you, it's not. It does not represent BioWare at its finest by any means.
Well,
I highly recommend you grab the Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect trilogy. Well, that's BioWare at its highest.
And to be honest with you, like, I'm not even, like, I'm kind of giving them a little bit of a break because I know how much, like, people just absolutely love the Mass Effect games, and I understand why. But, like, with this is their very first, like, giant open world, multiplayer, all online based game. So it's like, there's a lot of things that they don't know. They're kind of stepping on a new frontier doing this. So with the server disconnects and everything, like, I kind of expect it, because, you know, for as good as BioWare is with their games, this is all new to them, you know. And even like some people have kind of complained a little bit about the story. well, that's fine, but you also have to figure in the fact that you're trying to put a story in with multiplayer. Like, it's very hard. If it's all single player based, that's fine. That's why a lot of their other titles have been so well, so highly praised, because single player titles, they're not multiplayer or anything. And then the only other downside that I'm gonna kind of tease real quick here, is the load times. They're not as bad as they were apparently before the day one patch, because people that got to play, if you were in freaking the Origin Premium Access Pass on PC, you played it like a whole week before everybody else. A lot of those people were complaining that they were literally sitting at some of these load screens for like 5 to 7 minutes, which, for those of you that haven't played Anthem, there are a ton of load screens, like, kind of to an obnoxious point. Like, it literally kind of pulls you out of the game. Like, if you getting into, an expedition or whatever, or even a free roam, you're loading into a screen. When there's like these little dungeon areas, you're loading into those. If you're playing with a friend and you're off looking at one thing and he goes too far away from you, it will give you like a solid 20 seconds or whatever to get from where you are over to him. And sometimes that is like really, like, that's a freaking far distance, and you're not going to be able to get there in time. And then there's another load screen to warp you to where your buddy is. If you decide you die and you're like, okay, nobody's around to revive me, I'm just going to respawn myself, there's another load screen. And it's just like, there's a lot of things that I wish that they would do differently to kind of cure that issue. But if you want to read more, I'll have my review. I'll probably start, if I can get enough of it done, I might have it done by like this week sometime. I'm hoping that's the end goal.
I look forward to that. I'll probably read it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think a lot of people will be interested to read it because it is coming from somebody that isn't a BioWare fan and doesn't have this, like, it has never played their games before, so I'm going in with a fresh pair of eyes. Whereas like a lot of other people that may have reviewed their games, they're like, oh, okay, well, they're huge BioWare fans. They've played all the Mass Effect games and everything, so they're, it's just like a different perspective. I think people will appreciate it. What have you been playing?
It's my philosophy that is the perfect perspective to go into a game review with.
Oh yeah.
You don't, because I don't know. It's probably just because of my brain and the way I've always excelled a lot in like mathematics and science and things like that. That's just my forte, and so it's very easy for me to look at things logically and say, well, you know what? Take out, if you want to get a good game review that is really true to everything, you got to take out all other variables. So you've got to take out the idea of, oh, maybe this person has some nostalgia about a previous game by the same company. Maybe this person has, maybe it's a sequel and this person already has played the previous ones, and that'll affect how he rates it. And that's something that I feel like we could use less of.
Well,
I think the fresh pair of eyes thing is great.
I'm not saying either that, like, not having somebody, like, I don't know if I would want somebody that has never played a Call of Duty game to review a Call of Duty game. Like, I personally would want somebody that is a fan of the series, that has played enough of these games to really dig deep into, like, some of the issues that maybe, like, somebody who, is a core, or just like a casual fan or something might go, oh, like, I didn't even think about that. Like, they pointed out something that maybe I should be a little bit more concerned with. I mean, I can kind of, I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of somebody going in with a fresh pair of eyes, and giving a fresh perspective on a franchise that maybe they don't normally play, or from a developer that they don't normally, play their games. But I also like the perspective of somebody that knows these types of games inside and out. Like, if you know shooters, I definitely want your opinion on this new shooter. Like, how does it feel compared to other shooters that maybe I might have played? You know, who knows? So, but sir, what have you been playing? I just took up about 10 minutes talking about Anthem, so
that's time not wasted, my friend.
There was no load screen in between this.
So for me, I've been really trying to focus on some indie titles. I want to get because frankly, I'm tired of having these kind of big promises from these AAA companies and then being disappointed. Like Fallout 76, I still can't believe I spent $60 on that game.
I apologize. But it's... Oh, go ahead. I'll say that after you're done.
Okay. But so I've picked up, so a couple things I've picked up are some indie games, and then also some games that aren't necessarily indie, but they're older, and I'm just kind of taking a trip into the past, like playing these games that everyone kind of says, like, no matter where you go, like, oh, this is a game you should play. And one of those games was Continue. That was a brand new indie game that came out, I think, on the 22nd of February, just passed recently. I did a quick review on that one, and it was only okay, not great. That had you guys can read the review, but it had a lot of issues with the combat, which sucks because it is a hack and slash.
Yeah.
And there are just some things, like if you want to get a 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10, 8, 9, 10 out of 10 around that area, and you're a hack and slash game, you got to do the combat perfectly.
Yeah.
But it couldn't accomplish that, and so it was kind of a frustrating experience. So that's that. I'm working on a new review for a game called Dawn of Man. I don't want to say anything about it yet. It's kind of like a one of those games where you're playing God. It's like a simulation type thing, and basically you're going back to like 12,000 BC, I think it was.
Oh, really?
And you're playing out like the very beginning of human history in a way, but of course within the confined context of like this one area.
Oh, okay.
Or something like that. And you have a few different areas you can choose from with all kinds of different geographical features. So it caught my eyes, kind of interesting. It's published by Focus Home Interactive, so I expected it to have kind of a certain quality to it, because they're by no means a small publishing company. No. I'd say medium to high. They do a lot.
Okay,
So
they're not bad. They've released some pretty quality games.
Yeah, they've had their moments. So that's that. And then for the ones that are older, one I picked up was Grim Fandango remastered.
Oh, Grim Fandango.
Fandango. I'm sorry. I always.
It's fine.
I don't know why. Ever since I always correct myself usually, but I didn't catch it this time. But that's just when I was really young and first read the name. That's the way I read it, Fandango. I don't know, and I haven't gotten out of the habit. It says Grim Fandango.
Honestly, I don't even know if I'm necessarily pronouncing it properly, but because I've never played it, I know, like, I've seen like the game cover and everything for it, but I was just like, it didn't seem like it was my type of game, which is weird because I'll literally play anything.
Well, I picked it up because I'm a huge fan of story and characters and character development. This is supposed to have some extremely memorable and humorous characters, which it does have a lot of humor in it. The characters are very easy to kind of I won't say fall in love with, but kind of appreciate. But I really think it just suffers from, at least in a modern context, it suffers from just old ways of video games, like the point and click, fixed camera, stuff like that. Like that's kind of old news now. No games really have that anymore. You always control with WASD or the arrows or something like that. So I don't know. It's for all intents and purposes, it's kind of a puzzle game. So it's kind of enjoyable, but it's just a little old fashioned. But then the last one that I've been playing recently is the original Borderlands, because I've played Borderlands 2 all the way through a couple times, but I never played the original, and I always played Borderlands 2 with my friends. That wasn't a game that I ever played on my own, really. And so my friend was like, you know what we got to do? We got to replay Borderlands 2. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. He's like, or better yet, let's play the original. And I said, oh, yeah, let's do that. So $20 later, and it's definitely not as good as the second one, but it's it's a Borderlands game, which I love. I think it's one of the best RPG. I think the Borderlands series is one of the best RPGs probably in recent history. Oh, you gotta. I wouldn't suggest starting out with the original. I would suggest starting out with number 2, because you don't really lose a lot and you still enjoy it. The writing is much smarter. The characters are much more prevalent in Borderlands 2. It's a blast. As long as you got a couple of friends to play with you, it's really fun.
See, and that's
especially
the thing,
since the
no, go ahead.
The AI is all kinds of screwed up, so it's fun. It's just fun.
Yeah, I'll say, like, a lot of my friends, we've been playing a lot of Apex Legends, so I don't think that jumping back, and especially not my buddy Kenny, like, I don't think he would jump back to start playing Borderlands 2 if I were to pick it up. And I just, with all of the games that are coming out, like, even just recently, like, there's no way that I've even had time to, I would have time to go back and play any older titles. Like, there's no time for them all. I can't touch everything, unfortunately. It sucks. It hurts my heart.
I have very specific tastes, so I don't. So I'm one that when people are like, oh, there's just so many new games coming out that are so good that I want to pick up, I'm like, yeah, I don't see it that way. I just things like Devil May Cry 5 is a perfect example. That's coming out here really soon. We're in the closing days of that, but that's a game that's just, I would never really want to play that. And honestly, I don't know if I even have a specific reason behind it. I have to like think about it, because I would kind of have to like look into myself and be like, why do I really not want to play this game? But I just when I see a trailer, I just know if I want to play it or not, and that's just not a game I want to play. And that's how I feel about a lot of games. Specifically, this is gonna sound racist, and it probably is. This is like video game racist. But
I was like, no, don't say it.
This is like video game racist, but like the more Japanese a game gets, like the less likely I am to play it.
I can sort of agree with you on that, because I mean, if you get like some of the ones that are like really, really Japanese can be almost kind of like childish, if that's the word I want to use, right? Or it just kind of seems like not a very like a mature type of game. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older too. I mean, I'm gonna be turning 29 this year, but I just prefer like a more mature themed game, something that might, tackle some more adult type situations. Which is, why I like a lot of the games that I like. But yeah, I don't know. It's just that it just seems like I don't really like going back so much and playing the more like elementary based games.
I think something Japanese games do that I just can't get behind is how artificial and fake they are. I think Western games are a lot more centered in reality, even if it's not something that you yourself would probably live out. It's very much Western games are very much into okay, let's look within the realm we live in, and let's look at kind of like an alternate way of this playing out, or let's look at a part of history. Let's look at a situation that could happen in this world, but way in the future. So it's still kind of new and different and fresh in a way.
Yeah.
But Japanese games are a little more outlandish in the sense that there's more there's higher possibility, higher room for experimenting with things that are just totally crazy, like monsters and things like that. Things that are totally fantasy.
Yeah.
That's more of a Japanese brand of video games, and that just doesn't quite appeal to me as much.
No, it's understandable. I can side with you on that.
And that I'm gonna say that might be with I'm gonna put like a little like note to that, but I'm not entirely sure about horror games. So anything I'm saying, just like take horror games out of the equation, because I've played no horror games at all. So don't be. The closest thing to a horror game that I played was Doki Doki Literature Club, and I don't even think that can really be classified as a horror. It's more of like a
suspense,
weird It's like a psychological horror, which is a little bit different. It's like its own subgenre of horror. But
I've never heard of it.
But anyway, I think that's my thing with Japanese games.
No, like I said, that's totally understandable. I can definitely get behind that. So, well, have you played anything else?
No, I think my 85 games that I've played recently are. I think that's enough for me. Oh, that's and then Anthem, of course. But yeah, we already talked about that.
I'll be curious to, like, once you've, if you put enough time into it to beat it, I'll be curious to sit down and talk with you about that, because I think we could spark some very interesting conversations from talking about that. As we've already talked at nauseum about it already at the start of this.
Yeah. I could go on.
Yes, I know I could too. But
we got to do that for one of these episodes. Just, you know what? No topic that we want to hit on. Let's just talk. Let's just see where it goes. Talk about the things we're playing and see where the conversation takes us. Because I think we've already proven that we can do that pretty successfully.
I've already talked to Devin about possibly getting another. I mean, since this one we've been this is like episodes 15 or 16 or whatever now.
I actually think this should be 17.
Oh, even better. That's just goes to show you how many I probably haven't been on. But no, I like it's just another podcast that just where you get an actual group, not just necessarily two people, but a group of us together where we just kind of bullshit around, and just talk about whatever. I'm another podcast that does literally the exact same thing and I'm gonna I'm gonna pimp them out here a little bit, is the Kind of Funny podcast. Like, they do that, and it is probably one of my favorite podcasts to listen to, just to hear like what it is that they're doing in their life. So I'm still working on getting that possibly greenlit, but we'll see. I don't want to say anything else about it because I don't want to get people too excited for it and then have it not happen.
Right.
So let's dive into some news.
Yeah, so we've got a few things. We've got first of all, probably the biggest news. It's probably going to be the biggest news of yeah, it could probably go for biggest news, top 10 biggest news of the year, top 5 maybe. Reggie Fils-Aimé, the longtime president and COO of Nintendo of America, has announced that April 15th will be his last day as the company's president and COO. According to him, he's interested in just laying back, spending time with his friends and family, and really becoming more of a gamer than anything else. But
businessman.
Yeah, he's this is not bad blood with Nintendo. This is not, oh my gosh, he's gonna go to another company. I wonder where he's gonna go. No, he's retiring, officially. So, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, it's kind of sad to see him leave. It's like, I feel like just recently, he's kind of become the new face of Nintendo, and it's like, okay, even all the press conferences and everything, he seems to have shown up at. And he was just at freaking the Game Awards show, and he was on stage with Sean Layden and oh damn it, Phil Spencer. It almost slipped. I almost forgot him. And having like the big three up on stage, and then it's like, like he's not there. So it's a bummer. But I think the what is it, Doug Bowser, which is freaking ironic that his last name is Bowser, and he's gonna be freaking the new guy for Nintendo. But yeah, like, I mean, I wish Reggie the best in his retirement, and hopefully, obviously with him doing this, he'll have more time to play games and do the stuff that he wants.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I'm not a big enough fan of Nintendo to say where I think this would go. Honestly, this would be a great conversation to have with one of my friends who's actually been on a podcast with us. His name is Ethan. He would be perfect to talk about this. He knows all things video or Nintendo rather. So, but I don't know quite enough about Doug Bowser to say the exactly what I think is going to happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know anything about him either, which is actually funny because I've been following him for a while before he even took up this position, but he doesn't really post anything to his social media, at least that I notice. I follow like probably 600 800 people, so he, that one person gets kind of lost in the masses. But yeah, I mean, I think he'll do a good job. I don't think that he'll steer Nintendo fans astray. I think he'll keep us on the path that Reggie was, and yeah, I think he'll do a good job. I hope so, at least.
Yeah. I wanna have Ethan back on a podcast closer to April 15th, when it's gonna be Reggie's last day, to get a better idea of what he thinks. Because again, he's a Nintendo expert.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But
bring him on.
Yeah. Anyway, other than that, we've got we really have to pick and choose here, and I think the biggest things to hit on right now are E3 announcements and speculation, that sort of thing. The biggest recently being Cyberpunk pretty much became the first game to officially confirm that they will be at E3 2019. CD Projekt Red tweeted from the Cyberpunk 2077 Twitter account. They said, I'm slightly paraphrasing, it wasn't a long tweet, but basically they said, for all of you asking, yes, we will be at E3 this year.
Excited for that game. Like, you have no idea. I've already come out and said that, like, I will buy one of the highest tier packages of that game that you can get, because CD Projekt Red has more than proved themselves to be one of the top tier developers of our industry. I mean, they came out with Witcher 1 and it was just kind of came out with Witcher 2, had a couple more fans, but it was just kind of and then they came out with the freaking blockbuster Witcher 3, and that thing just sold just tons. I mean, that was huge. That won E3 awards, that tens across the board, super power, and every update they kept making the game better. And then there are 2 DLC bits, that they charged you way less than what they should have. Like, they should have charged you way more for that DLC because of how expansive they were, and the stories for them were almost better than what was in the main campaign of the base game. And they even had like a little love letter on the inside of the box if you bought the hard copy edition, saying, hey, you know what, like, thanks for buying this game, and as a thank you from us, any like DLC as far as like cosmetic stuff, all free on us, just as a thank you. And it's like, man, like, they just built up a lot of goodwill for their players and everything, and including myself. And so I am thoroughly anticipating, like, I will be doing the review for that game. I will fight somebody for it. If somebody jumps in and says they want to do it, I will literally start a fight, because I want to play that game. I will sink, if it's as big or bigger than The Witcher, I will be sinking easily 200 hours into it.
All right, boys. No biting, no scratching, and no poking your eyes out. Other than that, all is fair game. Let's make it clean. Winner gets to review Cyberpunk 2077.
What's really scary about all of that is the fact that you literally sounded like an announcer at a boxing match, like back in like the 60s.
I was really going for that mid 20th century stereotypical announcer voice.
That worked like perfectly, and I don't know if it's because you're still recovering from being sick, but that was like spot on, dude.
I do voices. I do voices.
We're gonna have to do we'll do an entire episode of just like voice acting, and we'll see. we'll maybe just have people like vote on it at the end.
we're gonna have to get some video game characters together.
Oh, dude, I'm all down for this.
Anyway, so that's Cyberpunk 2077. Other than that, for E3, we've got a couple things recently. We heard I can't remember. It's a French publication basically came out and said that Xbox's E3 conference would have the next Xbox console, which is not going to be it's not going. We already know that the next Xbox console won't be the next generation. It's just going to be, I believe it's going to be within the Xbox One family. I believe, and it's supposed to be basically the first console that doesn't take cartridges or discs or anything. It's all like an online service, but you buy the box basically for the operating system to run the games and to do all that. So that's kind of an interesting one. I honestly have a hard time predicting how gamers are going to respond to this. From my perspective, I see this and I think to myself, I don't understand why I need to buy that. And the only way that it makes sense to me is if they're trying, if they market it towards an audience of people who don't already have Xboxes. Something that can be a little bit cheaper maybe than a traditional like a new generation console, or definitely cheaper than their Xbox One X. Something to kind of tempt both parents of kids and then also people who aren't really into Xbox, probably more towards the Nintendo or PlayStation side of things, say, hey, you want to dip your feet into the waters of Microsoft and Xbox? Here's a console that doesn't cost that much. You don't have to worry about buying physical copies or anything like that. Just do what you're already doing on a different console for pennies compared to what the cost of consoles usually is these days.
I hope that they don't do that, especially keeping it within the Xbox One family. And here's my reason why. We're already hearing rumors of the next console generation possibly either being released and or shown off next year. If they are planning on releasing some other form of hardware that is going to be like a stream box, I feel like that would hurt them more than it would help them, because so you're already this late into the console generation going to release another piece of hardware that can, even if it just streams games, which that's been like the new technology that's been going on. Nvidia's doing it. A couple other companies are, kind of dipping their toes into it. Google does it. That's fine, but don't save it for next generation, because you're not going to want to then try to keep, all those people that you just encouraged to get this stream box or whatever for this current generation. Well, they're not going to want to turn around and buy the next one. They just bought this. Why would they do that? So it's like, I feel like it would be almost smarter on Microsoft's side if they did that for the next one, where it's like, listen, like, we still have this console, like our mainline console that still has a disc reader, so that if you want physical copy games, you will still be able to purchase them and play them on this. But if you're more of a person that likes to buy all digital or stream your games, you don't really care too much about owning them, you just want saved data, then you can have this stream box and it's going to do exactly that for you. And there's not going to be any difference in, how the game plays or anything from being able to play it on a physical disc. But if you don't want to have all that and you want a cheaper console to still be able to play all the hot titles and everything that we have coming to this console, here's a cheaper version of it for you. I think that would work out better in their opinion. And again, I'm sure that they probably have a business model that tells them otherwise. I don't know the numbers. I'm not a business expert. I majored in cybersecurity. I can just tell you how not to get your console hacked into. But
which is useful.
It is useful, yeah. You just pretty much have to have a firewall and don't give your password to your router out to anybody. And don't look up certain things that are graphical on the internet. That's literally all you have to do.
Well done, David. Here's your diploma.
Woohoo! I actually did just get my diploma a couple weeks ago.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. Very proud of that. 7 years in the making. Who would have thought? But, no, yeah, so that's my own personal opinion on that. I hope that they save that time and energy into something that could really benefit people in the next generation and not trying to do that now. Because I also don't think that it's going to sell well if they do that. Like, people, if you don't have an Xbox console by now and you've been thinking about it, you're going to want to save your money for the next generation then. I mean, we've already seen that they're capable of doing backwards compatibility on the Xbox One. More than likely, I mean, I would be willing to bet my tax refund check on the fact that they will have backwards compatibility on the next generation, because they just announced, what was it, like 1 or 2 E3s ago, that they were going to do backwards compatibility with the standard Xbox games, like the OG ones. and there's not a whole lot of them out, at least that I've noticed, and I'm on the store quite a bit, and so it's like they're still going to want to keep that trend going into the next generation, where they're going to be like, okay, this console plays all of the current and new titles that we're bringing to this thing. It's going to play all your Xbox One games. It's going to play all your Xbox 360 and all your Xbox OG games. You know, like that's kind of what I feel like they're going to want to go for. So if you're thinking about getting this, and if they decide to release this, and obviously this is all hypothetical, but save your money. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong too. Again, that's just I thought I heard that it wouldn't be the next generation of console. That just sounds familiar to me. But I hope I'm wrong. If it turns out to be the next generation of console and I'm wrong and I don't know where I heard that from, then I'd be more than happy. I think that'd be great as long as it comes with a little extra storage.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm gonna want to get more than 2 terabytes if I can't use a disc, for sure.
And to be honest with you, I hope that the consoles come. I mean, with how cheap you can buy data now, I hope that they bring them out and they're like, listen, we've got, you know, to start out, it's a 2 terabyte console. Like that's our standard, that's our default storage capacity, and then we'll max it out at like 10, you know, terabytes or whatever. Because when they started out this console generation, they're like, oh, we've got 500 gig hard drives. And at first we're like, oh my God, that's so much. And then they freaking one of the very first games they released, boom, Halo 5. How big is it? 100 gigs. That's freaking 20% of my hard drive. I know. Why did you do this? We like you. No, you don't. You need to give us more. Because I had to go out and buy a terabyte hard drive externally for both my PlayStation and my Xbox, and I've still almost filled them up.
Yeah.
Like,
and you know, that's something that with this whole backwards compatibility thing, it makes it easier to keep games from one console to the next. Storage becomes a bigger and bigger issue.
Oh yeah.
Just as we go on, as individual games themselves start to take up more space and you develop more games and those can be played on the newer consoles. So we need consoles to keep having more and more space available. And it makes sense that they would. I believe it's Moore's law says that every 2 years the capacity and abilities of a computer, capabilities of a computer double every 2 years. So there shouldn't be that much of a problem with putting extra storage space on it, but it is something I'm concerned about. And that is one thing actually that concerns me in regards to this next generation, just because I feel like it would be such a Microsoft thing. This would be so typical of the gaming industry, frankly. Would be this situation where Microsoft says, hey, we don't want you to have all of this storage. What we want from you is to have a little bit of storage that seems like a lot at first when you buy it, but really isn't. And then you fill it all up, and then you have to come to us to buy our Xbox our Xbox hard drive, external hard drive.
Yeah.
And then what would be even more typical is if PlayStation then comes in and says, "Oh, you know what? That's a good money-making idea those guys had." And then they just do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's what happened with Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, the PlayStation Plus. I mean, that's just when one company can do it successfully, every company's going to do it successfully just because they can.
Oh yeah, and it's more money. So
yeah. And then before we kind of migrate into our main topic, the only other thing I'm going to say is with this new Xbox is not having a disk drive. The only thing that concerns me with it being if it is next gen, is that if it's like that, then none of my discs I'm not going to be able to use any of my discs on that new Xbox. So it'll be backwards compatible, but I'd have to buy the game again.
Well, but if they do what they're talking about doing, and that's having like they did with this generation, where there's multiple consoles, where there's like you have the OG Xbox One, you've got the slim model, you've got the Xbox One X, that's like the freaking powerhouse. You know, if they decided to have like at least a total of 3, where there's like their default one, they've got their high powered one, and then they've got their one without a disc drive where you can just stream your games or whatever, then that would be fine. You know, just to give people that option, especially if the Stream Deck is going to be a cheaper version that people can still use to play their games. Like, that to me is fine. You know, because then that way I still have the option to go and spend the money, you know, whether it's $400 or $500 or whatever, on the base model Xbox with the disc drive, you know, and that way if they do continue to do backwards compatibility and they're like, hey, you can bring over, you know, your saved game data over here and you can play your discs and everything, like all of that, that's fine. But
but the thing is that those were all kind of released one after another. So unless they're going for like a simultaneous release, then that's not going to work, because we already know Xbox told us that their next console will be a console that does not have a disc drive. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is, we know that. And so if that's true, and they do release the like next generation, like the next family of Xbox consoles, the next generation, and this one is part of that, then this one's going to be first, and then the one with the disc drive is coming later. And that, I feel like, is crappy.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just crappy business.
I don't know. Again, I'm sure they have business models that, you know, kind of tell them, you know, and people that are way smarter than you and I, that know this stuff. And
we need to take some business classes.
Yeah, dude, I wish. I just got done paying for college. I need a break. Maybe we can ask Devin. Maybe Devin will have some insight into this.
Yeah, he would be a good person.
Yeah. But maybe another podcast we can steal him in here and ask him.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so the big thing we want to cover for the rest of the podcast, our remaining 15 to 20 minutes or so, is something. It's a topic that I've been wanting to cover ever since basically we started recording podcasts. It's been a question of mine that I either wanted to write an article about or do a podcast on something. But everyone kind of looks for something different in a video game. And so I'd like to kind of explore what do you think is the most important aspect of a game? It could be combat, it could be gameplay, it could be the story, the characters, it could be graphics, although I think nowadays that's like a defunct, not really myth, but almost kind of, where graphics are so important. But anyway, so just what are your thoughts about those? What's the most important aspect? What's the thing that does it for video games?
You know, I sat back and I was thinking about this because we obviously we talked before we start recording these, and that is a very good question, and I don't know if I have like a definitive answer for it, because, you know, like you said, like with a lot of games, like especially nowadays, the graphics are already there. I mean, they're phenomenal, and even you don't even necessarily have to have great graphics to have a great game. I mean, look at some of these games that are 2D pixelated, you know, that are still coming out that are phenomenal. I mean, Celeste is a perfect example.
I think that's one thing where it's like, like, what are good graphics? Do good graphics mean realistic graphics, or does that just mean it looks nice? Because I think both Uncharted 4 and Celeste, I think they both have really great graphics,
Oh yeah.
but not even close to, they're opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it just is, like I said, like you said, as far as, one being pixels and sprites and everything compared to using 3D rendering polygons, on your stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, that is a seriously tough question because for me, like, I could sit back and go, man, I really think that as long as a game has solid, like, mechanics, that kind of makes a game. And maybe that's kind of like my definitive answer is if it has solid mechanics, if the, and I guess I'm just gonna say, for a comparison or whatever, like Apex Legends is a great game. The reason why I think I like it so much is because it is just the mechanics for that work. I mean, it's very tight controls, it's very fluid. The running and the jumping and especially like when you're sliding down hills and the gunplay and everything, like those all combined to just make the overall experience just fantastic. And it's very, very comparable to Call of Duty, where it's like Call of Duty, man, the sliding, the tight gunplay and everything, it feels really good. So it is just very exciting and fulfilling to play those games. A game that I still kind of struggle to play with, and it's because the controls aren't necessarily quite as tight as what I would prefer them to be, is PUBG. You can do a third person or a first person perspective in those, and the third person perspective is usually what I play in the most, just because you can do the third person peeking and all that jazz. But when I switch into first person mode, and it's usually whenever I'm in like a house or something, it just doesn't feel right. It feels kind of like there's just a little bit of drag in the controls, and I've messed around in the settings and I've tried to increase the sensitivity and the joystick dead zone and everything, and tried to make it as absolutely close to a Call of Duty or an Apex or even a Titanfall as I could, and it's just not there. So it's just the mechanics for that game just don't feel that good to me, and I don't therefore enjoy playing it nearly as much as I enjoy playing Apex or Call of Duty.
Honestly, that whole third person, first person thing, I feel the exact same way, but about any Rockstar game. Like,
Okay.
first person in those games to me is just so uncomfortable, and I don't know why you'd want to do it. You just can't turn and do things as quickly just because when you're taking it from a first person perspective like that, everything just kind of whizzes by so quickly if you actually have if you have the sensitivity on a reasonable setting that like is kind of realistic and at a rate that you feel comfortable with. I always feel like whenever I do that, everything whizzes by so quickly and it gives me almost motion sickness just because of that stuff. But third person is perfect because your eyes are still trained on kind of your character in the middle, which doesn't really move side to side very much and pan like that. The camera's always centered on it, so you always have like a center of not gravity but like a focal point to look at, and so it's much more pleasing to the eye, I've always felt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I even noticed that when I was playing Red Dead 2, which, by the way, I haven't played that game in a very long time. I just kind of... It's just one of those things where all these games came out on top of them, and I just had to pick and choose. But, no, I mean, I noticed the exact same thing. Like, when I'm playing in the third person for that, it felt better than when I was playing in first person. When I played in first person, it was just like, I don't know, it didn't feel right at all. And I was like, oh, I gotta go back to the third person. And even the third person, like there's just some times where it's not quite as jittery. Like they tried to make it still kind of too realistic, where you're due to like actually stop if he's running one direction to, kind of whatever you want to do to change directions. And it just kind of, it's almost like it's too realistic. And so it just, I don't know. But yeah, it's just one of those games where it's like, I feel controls just, It's
Yeah, so those controls, when it comes down to that kind of stuff, I mean, that can make a huge difference in your experience in the game. Like if you can't choose between a third person and a first person, let's say it's just a first person game, but the first person is like absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And it makes you sick and stuff like that. I mean, are you gonna call that a good game? You like couldn't even really experience the game the way that it was meant to be experienced because you couldn't focus on anything.
Yeah.
You just felt sick.
And I even feel too like there are some games where like, okay, and I'm going to use this as an example because I've been playing this a little bit recently too. The original Kingdom Hearts. From what I've heard, like, and I'm decently far into it. I talked to my buddy who's beaten it a number of times, and I was like, how much further do I have left to go? And he's like, you got like 3 more worlds left before you're like end game stuff. And it's a great game, but the controls are god awful. And so it makes playing it very hard for me because it's like, all right, well, I'm not really enjoying this game as much as I feel like I would have had I played it back in the day, where I didn't have all these other games that had way better controls where I was being spoiled. And I've heard like, that they definitely changed things up when they went to Kingdom Hearts 2, and that's fine. Like I'm looking forward to jumping into that. But I will tell you, like with the way I felt like I've almost kind of been forcing myself to play Kingdom Hearts just to say that I've played it and I've beaten it and I got the gist of the story, and gone through. And I just feel like sometimes like not even a story is enough to really get a game to be good. Like I'm not going to sit there and be like, man, that story was great, but freaking crap, dude. Like the control, I was struggling the entire game. Like there was not one point in that game that was playing it that was fun. Like I looked forward to cutscenes, like I don't want a game to feel like that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt with Quantum Break. I was always waiting for the cutscene. I'm like, God, just cutscene, please come, because they're so much more interesting because the gameplay just isn't fun.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I feel like on a level, maybe the story in that sense, maybe the story to me is the most important aspect of a video game, because I can still confidently say that Quantum Break is probably an average, maybe slightly above average game, like maybe a 6 out of 10 or something, 6.5 out of 10, and which is above average. And I think I just think even though the combat is frustrating, the AI sucks, some of the enemies you face are just kind of dumb. I mean, things like that. In a way, I feel like it can all be overcome by the fact that the story and the characters are the characters have a sort of relatability to them almost, and the story is very interesting, very fascinating, and different. So it has that going for it, and that keeps my attention and keeps my enjoyment at an acceptable level to where I can finish the game.
See, and that was the thing that I was kind of struggling with too, because it's like, I'm sure that, and I haven't really come across any of these games, and I think you'd probably run the risk more with an indie type game than you would necessarily like a AAA game, because I'm sure like if a AAA game had, really bad, movement or controls or whatever, they would be patching that up real fast, just because they've got the budget and the manpower to do so. But I did kind of debate with myself a little bit as far as like, could a story for a game be so good to where it would still keep people playing it even if the controls sucked? And like I said, Go ahead.
I think I think two, well, more than that technically, but like two examples I can throw out there that could kind of bolster that idea of story being more important are Telltale games. People love those. I love those. Even though gameplay is a lot of choose your option.
Yeah.
Okay, quick time event real quick. Okay, choose your option. A very simple, sometimes don't quite even work correctly. I mean, at times, but they're still some of them, like the original Walking Dead, is considered one of the top 100 games probably of all time, and that's what the game is.
Yeah.
And so a game can skate by on its story, its dialogue, its characters, the voice actors, and all that stuff. It can skate by with those alone, and it can surpass gameplay and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess
So that's one.
So I think the game for me that kind of does the exact same thing, and I know it was, like I said, it's kind of in the era that we did the walking simulators and everything for, was Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. The story for me overall was really good. Like, it had me enticed, but the walking was so slow. Like, almost to a like, oh my god, like I just couldn't wait to get to the next like little bit where like these two orbs or whatever were gonna start talking and telling this story. Like, the story was really good and the voice acting was really good for it, but the freaking just the walking from point A to point B, in between these little bits or whatever, hurt the game entirely. And I mean, I know the developer came out and they're like, oh, well, we boosted, like you're able to kind of run now or whatever, and it didn't help. And I was like, why don't you just like allow us to sprint, instead of having it do this? But yeah, that for me, like after you were like sitting there talking about like The Walking Dead, which that's another thing that I've never played. I don't like point and click adventures. That's, if I had to hate one type of game, it would be point and click adventures. I cannot tolerate them. And that's just my own personal opinion. I don't have the patience or the attention span for them, because I just think that they just don't hold my attention that well. I need something where there's like constantly something going on almost.
Well, one that does that a little, one game, the other example I had that does that a little better, but still the gameplay is again it's not, it can get a little hectic and interesting, but really it's, when you get to the bare bones of it, it's extremely simple and not complex. Really, it's Undertale.
Yeah.
I think that does a great job. Probably one of the best indie titles to ever exist, and it does a great job of having very simple gameplay, but yet you have using a story that is interesting enough and characters that are quirky and funny, and using that to again get by and still be considered a great game. So that's why I think my definitive answer is story. I think story is really the most important part of a game.
I need to play that.
If you want to talk about, I mean, if you want to start looking at which games are considered the best games ever made, you've got to have story.
Yeah, like I said, I think that there are definitely, and maybe it's circumstantial too, where, like a game like Call of Duty Blackout 4, or wow, Blackout 4, I can't believe you need to edit that out. We won't talk about that.
Try again.
Call of Duty Black Ops 4, where the game doesn't have a story, so it relies heavily on the controls and the feel of the game, whereas something that's maybe a little bit more story focused and single player and everything, where like, okay, we can probably have, for lack of a better word, like controls, but we gotta make sure that we nail this story.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say it's both. I'm going to agree to disagree and just hit the nail right in between them both.
And there's no real correct answer here. In fact, there really isn't even an answer for what's the most important aspect. It's just a cool conversation to have.
Oh yeah.
The idea that maybe there is a more important aspect. I would say it's story if there were anything, but I think you totally need the perfect combination of everything to have a great game.
Oh yeah.
Even and the key, I think the key is, no matter how small it is, again back to the Undertale example, no matter how small the gameplay is perfected, and it's everything is purposeful and integral to the game. Everything is well thought out, even though it's very minimalistic. And so I think that's the key. So even if you don't have these really deep characters, they need to be funny and they need to be interesting in their own right, and what is there needs to be perfect in order to do that,
Yeah.
It needs to fit the game well.
Yeah. I agree with that.
So anyway, that just about wraps it up for us here. We'll do a quick wrap up because we're running out of time here, but anything you want to say last?
Well, I know I say this pretty much at the end of every podcast, but definitely go and check out the site. We've got some new stuff in the pipeline that's going to be coming out, as far as like writing and articles and everything go, and especially, if you listen to this podcast, tell your friends, because we really enjoy doing this and we want other people to enjoy listening to us as well. I'm no Greg Miller, but I think the Sick Critic podcast is a close second. I think we're pretty damn entertaining. So, don't
I think we can be.
Yeah, I think like they have some different tones to their podcast too, and I think we're very similar to that. And the other thing I want to say is definitely give Anthem a try. I know a lot of the reviews and everything that came out about it were like 6.5s and 7s and everything, which to a lot of people nowadays is like, oh my god, this is a bad game. Like, if this isn't an 8.5 or a 9, I'm not buying it. It's still really good. Like, they nail world building. Like, I cannot
save it for the article.
Oh, I will. I mean, there's gonna be it's gonna be a long ass article, but I mean, yeah, just my own personal advice is give it a try. It is still a good game, and they do have stuff lined up to keep it very interesting, even post game, or post.
They did post a schedule for it.
Yeah, I cannot wait till they do like their little raid system. So that's all I'm gonna say on that.
All right. Well, from me and everyone else here at Sick and Wired, sickcritic.com, we bid you adieu.